The last 3.5 months have been a challenge for every one of us, no matter how much your life may or may not have been changed. The world is kind of upside down. And so many people in here and out there have faced incredible hardship. A lot of sadness, also a lot of inner reflection, a lot of prayer, even a few miracles along the way. I know some of you hunger to see your loved ones more. I mean, to be away from your dad, your mom, your grandpa. I'm so glad that finally Peggy can go down and actually see her dad for the first time in months. You know, it's what a gift that is. So a lot of you have been separated. A lot of you have been with your family for 3.5 months and you've gotten closer. And some of you have told me that your family is driving you absolutely nuts. And you can't wait for just a little separation would be nice. And some of you are just bone weary. And you know what it's like to be bone weary. Or at the end of the day or the end of the week or after all this time, you just ache spiritually, emotionally, physically. And Jesus says, "Come to me, you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. My yoke is easy and my burden is light." I'm not sure exactly what it means, but sometimes you just got to take your burdens and cast them upon the Spirit of the Lord. And it's not like God's going to make everything okay. But somehow, some way, when you share your burdens with a higher power, it can set you free, at least a little bit. And that's why we're here. To somehow, some way, give you a dash of hope, knowing that you don't have to go through this thing alone. And sometimes the strongest thing you and I can do is to admit that we're weak and that we can't do it by ourselves, because it's no fun to do it by yourself. You know, I've learned a lot about myself. Oh, I'm really getting tired of my face. I didn't realize how many sports shirts I have, though, as I went through the thoughts for the day. But there are some things I say over and over again. One, I do watch these little thoughts, and I try to be a little critical. And I say somehow, some way all the time. Once, about 4 or 5 weeks ago, in my thought for the day, I said somehow, some way 14 times. And I said, "Don, what is that all about?" But there are cliches that I do say over and over again. And I didn't necessarily invent them, but I say them. Because, you know, we preachers love to talk, and talk is cheap. To me, when you tell somebody you love them, do you really love them? When you tell somebody, "I'm going to call you sometime." In my family, when somebody says sometime, it means never. Say, "I'm going to call you on Tuesday or on Wednesday." But somehow when we speak, it's important that there's substance behind those words. So I'd like to just share my top 3 cliches, which I've been saying. For example, we're all in this together. Now, I know that's the theme of this whole pandemic, but we invented that 20 years ago. And I remember about that time ago, Wendy Naughton, who usually comes to the early service, she was the principal for years and years at an inner city school. And there was a family that went through a tough time. There was a death in the school, and it rocked the entire school. And we talked about, you know, okay, we live in Orland Park or Palos Park or Tinley Park or Moni. Okay, then the city is the city. And sometimes we treat Chicago like it's another country. But we talked about the fact that in the scripture, it says we're all in this together. That means all of us. That when somebody miles away hurts, that means we hurt. And so we put together some aid for this family, and Wendy was stunned by how much money we raised. And I remember Wendy came up here and thanked the congregation. She was in tears because, in a way, she's a principal in a school that has so many differences than the schools that our kids go to. But that doesn't matter because we are in this together. The other one, it is what it is. And I know a lot of people are getting tired of that. The first time I heard it was about 8 years ago when I went to visit one of our members who was seriously ill with cancer, the sister of one of you. And I remember I was there when she passed away. And I was at their house, and I was ready to go home, and her husband, Tom, walked out the door with me. And he was just crushed. I mean, he knew it was coming. And he gave me a big hug. And he said, I don't know, Don, it is what it is. Because he had to stare reality right in the face. That's what it means. That you can't move on unless you can say it is what it is right now. This is the truth. This is what's happening. This is where God lives. This is where God's going to speak to me. But now, if I can look reality in the face, maybe I can move on and heal. The last one is, it'll never be the same, but it will be okay. You know, I'm not a big fan of change. Obviously, I don't like to change jobs. You know, but that's so true. I mean, my life will never be the same. Your life probably will never be the same. The church's life will probably never be the same. Maybe it shouldn't be. But it is what it is. And somehow, some way, it will be okay because we got each other. It will be okay because you're here and all those people out there are here. And somehow, some way, we'll get through this. I just said it again. And you know, we talk a lot about kindness and joy. And I know now that kindness and joy are the centerpiece of who we are. And one of you that's sitting here today sent me this yesterday in a text. This are the words. It says, today you could be standing next to someone who is trying their best not to fall apart. So whatever you do today, do it with kindness in your heart. It could be somebody you bump into at the Jewel. It could be on your way out of here. It could be a walk in your neighborhood. It could be tomorrow at work. And I bet you we all know what it's like. When you go through something tough, and you got to go to work, or you got to see someone, and all you're thinking about is what's going on inside your guts, and you just are barely holding it together, and one unkind word is going to make you tip over, and you just want to get through the day. You never know who that person is. And that person may be you. You know, whenever I preach, I always have somebody in my head. I always have somebody that's either inspired me or maybe doesn't like me or a moment. I think about those kinds of things. And I'm thinking of a lady in our church who's really hurting because someone in her family is really going through a tough time. And when I saw her yesterday, she had tears in her eyes and she just said, I feel empty. You know what it's like. You ever just feel empty? Just like there's nothing inside? But that's why we're here too. To just fill each other's cup with a dash of goodness. And finally, I'm thinking of a men's club guy who hasn't been there for a long time because he's deep in the throes of dementia. Lieutenant Dan, we used to call him. Lieutenant Dan. He's a proud Vietnam veteran, really good carpenter. He's replaced a lot of the windows and the doors at the church. But he's a mess. Poor guy, and you know what it's like when you deal with a loved one with dementia or Alzheimer's. My gosh, and so yesterday his daughter and grandson come by the church, and they're just empty. Financially, spiritually, emotionally. And his daughter thought she was dying of cancer 2 years ago. When her dad got sick, she just rallied. She just sucked it up and started taking care of her dad. She's empty, but she's also full. Because she's full of your prayers. Her purse is full with a little bit more cash. But for her, it is what it is. It ain't going to be the same. But it's going to be okay. Because she has a body here. You, wherever you are, she has a body that cares and makes a difference in her life. I realize those old words, say them over and over again. But they never get old because they have power. And remember, the power of kindness never, ever, ever goes away.